right, so we're just gonna wait for the numbers to go up for a bit, then we'll kickstart
Sure.
the session. Yep. Okay, so we have two now from FutureLab. Okay. Right. So, okay. Welcome to FutureLab Live. So right now we're just gonna wait for the number of audience to go up. Then we'll start shortly. So if you are interested to know more about what the topic is today, please just hold on tight because we're gonna begin in about 2 to 3 minutes, and the session's gonna be about 30 to 40 minutes long. So if you have any friends, any colleague or employees that is looking to maybe like kickstart your own business or startup during this period, then please do invite them over. Okay. Right. Start. Okay. Okay. So, all right. Without further ado. Okay. All right. So without further ado, would like to jump into the webinar that we will be having today. So to everyone's present, welcome to FutureLab Live. My name is Hamza and I'll be your host for today. And with me today is our mentor, Mr. Stanley Chong, a partner of Ingenious Haus Group. So thank you so much, Mr. Stanley, for joining us today. Maybe you can start off by introducing yourself, maybe a little bit of your history to the audience.
Thanks, Hamza. Thanks for the invite.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah. So a bit background. Basically, I have been in the tech and IT industry for close to about 30 years now, right? My background has been always in ITs, right? For the first, I'm a graduate, computer graduate background by myself. I've been for the first 10 years. I basically involved mainly on the technical side, right? I've been a programmers, system engineers, project managers, consultants, solution architects, so on and so forth. So for the past, the subsequent about 15 years, I involved mainly in sales, marketing, management role. So I also have the privilege to experience a startup myself. Right? I've done a startup. Then I move on to join MNCs as well, like Siemens and IBM, which basically learned a lot from there as well. So for the past about 5 to 8 years, I involved myself a lot in mentoring, coaching, business transformations. I personally also invest in a few company as well, right? Just to gain a bit more experience in investing and helping companies to grow and scale. So basically, that's my brief background.
All right. So, talking about startups, and the fact that you yourself have invested in a startup before, how would you define a startup? Because a lot of times people have this confusion, like this is a
Mhm.
startup, this is a business, and how is it different as compared to SMEs and other type of businesses out there?
Yeah, I believe there's a lot of definition out there, right? Mainly everyone have their own definition how what is a startup and not startup. But personally, from my experience, uh, the way I define startup is a entity or a company that is in search for a repeatable business and scalable business model, right? That is what normally a startup are doing, right? When they started, right, they are in the business of searching or looking or try to create, a business model that can scale, that can grow, and that can be repeated, right? But once you past that stage, like those what we call growth stage or scale up stage, those are the stage where the company now already have passed the startup stage. That means they already have found the kind of business model that they have looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And then is the time where they put more focus on try to execute, right? Execute that business model to
Yep.
grow, to scale, and to repeat. So they're not no longer in the state of searching and experimenting, right? So that's how
Mm-hmm.
I define between a startup and a non-startup.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I hope that gives some clarity there.
Yep, definitely. But one question in regard to that explanation
Mm-hmm.
is like a lot of time people would say like a startup has to be tech based. Is that necessarily a thing, in your opinion?
No, no, not necessary. As I said, if you have a business model that is still not proven yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're still searching for, you know, uh, a playbook or a way how to scale and how to repeat that business model. That means you're already proven. That's
Yep.
where in the tech industry you heard a lot of minimum product, a viable minimum viable product, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go into market validation stage.
Yep.
So the market validation stage is the stage where you validate, you know, your business model, and you try to validate your assumption, your forecast, so on and so forth, and you try to prove it and validate with the real market condition out there, real customers, right? Real paying
Mm-hmm.
customers. And then
Yep.
during that stage, normally you will either you pivot or you try to improvise or you try to enhance your business model
Mm-hmm.
so that you know you try to get it at least 80% right. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
once you reach that stage, doesn't matter it's tech or non-tech, it can be retail, can be F&B, it can be health, doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, uh, you want to be able to now grow.
Yep.
Okay. So once you pass that stage, your focus is to grow. You hire more people, you try to grow the companies, and you try to scale, you try to repeat the success. Okay, so it's a
Mm-hmm.
different focus. It's a different focus.
Mm-hmm. So basically, it's the mentality that's what differentiates like a startup from a normal
Yes,
business.
yes. I mean,
Ah,
you can see in the market there are companies that is like after 5 years or 10 years,
mm-hmm.
they're still searching. They're still
Yep.
trying to, you know, get the business model right. They're still struggling, right? They still live from month to month kind of thing. They can't, get a very consistent growth or consistent revenue over quarter to quarter.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a time bound. You see certain startup after 6 months or 1 year, they already passed the market validation,
Yep.
right? And you see they start to grow very fast, right? They just focus on executing and growing. They already get the business model correct.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not time bound as well. It's very much on the condition of the company itself, whether they have able to validate their business model, get it right, the operation, the efficiency, the productivities, uh, process, everything have matured, then they move on and then they grow.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's jump right into the topic of the day. So how do we build a sustainable and successful startup? Yeah.
Okay. I think that is a $1 million question, right?
Yeah.
Every startup, is looking for that. Unfortunately, there's no shortcut to that. There's no silver bullets or a playbook that you can follow and it will be right there.
Mm-hmm.
So because every companies have their own challenges, right? Their own unique challenges, business models, so on and so forth. I mean, you can read a lot, you can listen, you can go for seminars and also, but those at the end of the day is still rely on the experience from the founders team, right? The founders team are the one that have to lead, have to execute, right, and have to grow the companies. And 80% of it is based on, your experience, your ability to learn very quick, right? Because it's a learning journey, right? So my advice is always we have to start from the fundamental, right? You see a lot of startup, they grow very fast and then they disappear also very
Yeah.
fast, right? Growing, starting a startup and growing a startup is not very difficult,
Yeah.
but to sustain it, to keep growing, that is the most difficult part, right? So the most fundamental, for a startup is the founder's mindset, right? First of all, they need to have the mindset correct or continuously have a right mindset to learn, right? To observe, to listen, right? To think internally, and then how to apply that into the company itself,
Yeah.
right? So that is the fundamental, right? Learn how to uh, prepare the mindset first, okay? Then secondly is, you know, 50% of it is having the right and proper planning, right? Spend more time on the planning first, right? Plan for at least 2 to 3 years down the road, right? Have a business plan that, lists out at least 2 to 3 years and try to figure out how the companies will look like down the road. Then the other 50% is the execution. Once you have planned it ready, you need to execute, right? So if you uh, plan poorly, you will execute poorly as well, right? The same thing. You have the best planning, but you're not able to execute properly. It also will not, sustain. Okay.
True.
So for the successful part is the planning and execution, right? And the sustainability part is another portion that take into considerations uh, the longer term, right? The longer term means you must have the right business model, or you need to enhance it or pivot it into a business model that is sustainable. Means for example, your unit of economic of your business model have to make sense. For example, the cost of acquisition for a customer is, let's say, 50 ringgit, right? But the lifetime value of the customer that spend, right, contribute the revenue to the companies, let's say, for example, 20 ringgit. So you spend more to acquire a customer than, the revenue you're going to get from the customer in their lifetime. So certain
Yeah.
customer will only stay with you like 6 months or 2 months or 1 year, right? So that simple example, for example, the unit economic already not correct, right?
Yeah.
The more you grow, actually, the more you spend, the more you lost, because you spend more to acquire a customer that contribute less than the amount that you spend.
True.
Okay, so that's uh, one element of it that you can actually foresee or focus in your early planning. You don't need to wait like 6 months, 1 year, 2 years down the road after you spend so much time, efforts, and money to build the companies, and then you realize that it's not sustainable. Okay,
Agreed. Yeah.
right? So that's just one element. That's why the initial planning is very important. You need to get all these, metrics or traction performance metrics. They need to make sense, right?
Yep.
These
Of
metrics
course.
can change over time, right? But you need to try to be able to plan it out and look at different scenario, right? Best case scenario, worst case scenario, right? Whether the business is sustainable or not, right? And
Agreed.
along the way, the kind of challenges you will face, okay? And very important uh, elements is, as I mentioned, is there's a lot of things to learn. I mean, you ask any successful entrepreneurs, they've been in the business for 20, 30, 50 years, they're still learning. right? There's
Yeah.
no stopping. That's why the mindset is very important, right? Once you get the mindset correct, you're in the learning mode. You always learn, right? In fact, the more you learn, the more you realize that the more you need to learn.
Yeah.
Okay,
Agreed.
so other elements that I will try to I can share, on a high level, basically is other than a business plan, you need to really look at your team members and the culture. Right, this is the second important things. Right, we need to get it right in the very beginning. Okay, spend a bit more time on the company culture, because the culture would basically determine how fast, right, and how sustainable is your foundation when thing changes, when thing need to be, move forward very quickly. Your cultures and your team able to move together. Okay, and then the third one is basically uh, financial management, cash flow management. Right, a lot of startup, they don't really put emphasize on that. That's why you see a lot of, half of the startup fail because they run out of cash.
Yeah.
Right,
Agreed.
so uh, financial management, cash flow management is really important from the start, because even more important, because you have limited cash, you have limited runway, you have limited funding, right? Uh, a lot of founders, they, spending money is easy. They just spend, right?
Yeah.
But they have uh, don't have a lot of experience in managing uh, not only financing or funding, also look at the cash flow, right? You see a lot of startup, even the a bit successful startup, you see they always show they have revenue. They have a lot of revenue. They show good growth month to month, quarter to quarter, but somehow they still find it very difficult or struggling to pay the salary or pay their suppliers.
Yeah.
Right, every month the revenue grow, but they just don't have enough cash to pay out. That's cash flow management, right? Account receivable, account payable, your payment term, your supplier, your clients, all those uh, make a lot of uh, important decision as well. Like your business model in terms of your paying customer. Are they pay subscription based? They pay as you grow, right? So those are the things that will affect the company grow as well. And one of the items or elements I mentioned, that a lot of startup fail to put effort into that financial management. Okay, and then another one. I mean, there's a lot, but I just share the top uh, critical one. Right,
Yeah.
another one for startup. Right, why startup is have advantage over the bigger one. There are pro and cons, but the advantage for a startup is the the speed to execute, and also innovation. Right, that is one of the biggest advantage of a startup compared to a big boys. You come in, you
Yeah.
want to disrupt them, or you want to compete with them. Right, you don't have the branding, you don't have the marketing funding that they have, you don't have the kind of resources that they have. So what you can uh, compete on is basically your innovation and your speed to the market,
The
right?
velocity.
Yes, so you need to be able to move faster than them. You need to be able to innovate faster than them, right? A very uh, obvious example, for example, is like fintech. Now everyone talk about fintech, right? You see all this e-wallet coming out, right? They try to compete and disrupt all the conventional bank,
Yeah.
right? So how do they compete, right? They don't have the branding. They don't have all these big data centers and all those,
True.
right? So they don't have branches, physical presence. So they need to compete in terms of innovation. So the most obvious one is you see how quickly they can sign up or onboard the customers, right? You just download the apps, put in your name, phone numbers, email, that's it, right? They don't even need to know who you are and all this, but just to get them started,
Yep.
right? So you kept your risk lower by
Lower.
having a smaller transaction or limits. After a while, they get used to it already. They want to increase their limit. Okay, now you need to do EKYC, for example, right? You need to submit your selfie, submit your ICs, right? But you don't have physically, present yourself at the counters, do a thumbprint, everything
Yep.
like bank do, see?
Mm-mm.
Okay, and you can transfer money between wallet so easy,
Yep.
right? Now, Bank Negara are going to come out with the digital bank license, right? That will give them more ability or capability to compete with the conventional bank, right? Uh, so that's one way how a startup need to be able to build and compete. So this again, the successful side, as I say, just to summarize, on the successful side, you need to be able to plan and then execute, right? And then the sustainability side is more on the business model itself, the unit of economic, the ability to scale, right? Then how do you get your team to move from a startup to the scale up kind of environment? Okay, so in a nutshell, that's it. But of course, it sounds simple, but
Yep.
it's not. It's not simple in the first place, right? So if it's simple, so everyone will be going into doing a startup and all those. I
Yep.
mean, to be realistic, the failure rate of startup is more than 90%. And that's why it's so difficult. But you need to do. I mean, for my, you need to do a lot of thinking, a lot of planning.
All right. So, okay. Basically, like right now, since you've already mentioned about like the common mistakes that is done by a startup, like when they are running already. But from your experience, right? Because nowadays there's so much startups. Everyone's like so eager. They're young. They're like, hey, I want to be my own boss. I don't want to work in a corporate. I just want to go out from university. I want to start my own business right away. So since you've been involved in mentoring new startups under Magic, what are the common mistakes by these eager, like aspiring entrepreneurs, and what can they do to fix this? Because like I heard that some startups early stage they fall in love with the idea and then they end up like failing because of it. So what's your opinion or maybe advice for these like young eager entrepreneurs?
Okay, so from my experience, I mean, I've been mentoring and coaching like with Cradle, FutureLab and others for 5 to 8 years. I will say, based on my experience, right, as I said, the first thing is still back to the mindset, right? My one advice is for those startup that are already starting or planning to start and all those, one of the thing that the founders team can do is basically try to look for, founders or advisors or mentor or coach or whatever. Founder is the best option, right? That, is in their like 40s or late 40s or something like that, is that is more matured to come in, right, as one of the team members, right, to provide a different perspective. If you have a group of founders all like 20 overs, it's
Yep.
good. I mean, they are more energetic, they are enthusiastic, they are hungry, they're passionate to work and all those. But you need someone, you know,
With
that can come
experience.
in, yeah, they come in and give them a different. Because for those young founders, I mean, if you don't have the experience, means you don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know, right?
Yep.
So that is one safer way, right? To basically, I mean, when you do a business or startup, we all talk about probability of success, right?
Yep.
You want to keep increasing your success probability of your business, right? So you get a lot of help, right? So if you can, as I said, get someone that already have a lot of experience, not particularly in that industry, but when your company start to grow, you will realize that uh, the industry specific industry knowledge is not the most important, right? It's important in the beginning, right? You need to know. Let's say you're doing like what they now all these bitcoins or cryptocurrencies. So
Yep.
your founder team definitely need to have a couple of them that is really good in that industry. But when your business start to grow, when you grow from 5 people to 50 to 500 staff, right? You need more than just technical skill set, right? Operation
Agree.
efficiencies, how to put in your whole operation have to be process driven, for example. You look at all these Facebook, Googles, all those, when they grow to a certain stage, they have to hire professional CEO, COO to come in, right? The founders themselves have to move aside and do what they're good at, like research and development and all those, right? You can't do everything,
Agree.
okay? So uh, the second part is basically uh, a lot of them fail because they don't, as I say, come back to the planning. They only plan for 6 months or 1 year down the road, right? So they're not prepared after they have passed that stage. Then they realize that, oh, there are a lot of other things that they need to take care of. Like, for example, how they hire a CFO, right? If your founder is all technical staff, programmers, developers, do they know how to go and find a good or proper CFO? What kind of question they ask during the interview, for example, to assess a good CFO, for example, right?
True.
How do you hire, a good operation manager, for example, right? So all these things, if you plan it upfront, then you are anticipating it and you're preparing it, right? Then you have a better chance of success. So come back to the mindset again. A lot of them, especially those younger startup founders team, most of the failure that they face is basically they're not mature enough, for example, right? Other than not able to handling the next growth stage, for example, is also what we call how you name it, naivety, for example, or egotistic, for example, right? They are, a lot of them when they hit certain milestone or they get the first 50 customers, they're so happy already, right?
Yep.
They thought, oh, you know, that's it. I already proven my business model now. I can go all out and just do. So yeah, and a lot of them also because of that, right? They are not able to plan properly. A lot of them they say, I don't need to plan. I just go out and do it and see what's come next, for example.
Yep.
Okay. So that most of them is because of the lack of experience. Just like swimming or bicycle riding, you have not done it before. The first time you do it, definitely a lot of things, you fell down or you sink or whatever.
Yep.
So unless you have gone through a few startup yourself, then the subsequent one, you already know all this, then easier, right? For the first timer, definitely they will face all these challenges. That's why I say, to mitigate that, it's good that if you have someone, either, as I say, the founders or advisors or mentor or whatever, they come in, that have all those experience that can give you guidelines, right?
Yep.
So that yeah, people say you learn from your mistakes, right? But the wise man say you learn from other people's mistake.
Yep.
Why you need to learn from your own mistakes, right? As a
True.
startup, you might not able to, or you cannot afford to make too many mistakes, right?
Agreed.
Because you have a very short window of funding, maybe 6 months of fund, right? You
True.
try to avoid and you try to foresee even better, right? So if you have to learn it yourself, fine, you learn, but it's better than you learn from other people's mistake. Okay.
Agreed. Agreed.
So I think these are the couple things that uh, a lot of startup faces,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of them, they have no choice. They have to face it, right? Because they have not faced it before.
True.
So my advice is, um, you know, if you're planning to start or you're in the midst of starting, spend a lot of time, go and read. I mean, there's one way, lah. You read as much as you can, learn from all this reading, learn. The good thing about this era is internet. Everything is on the net.
Yep.
And my time, like 30 years ago, we don't have all this, right? Just
True.
Google, how why company fail. You follow my Facebook. You see, I also posted a lot of failure
Mm-hmm.
examples. From there you actually will learn those real failure, those real mistake, right? And then come back and think and reflect. How do I overcome that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these are the few advice that I'll share.
All right. So, okay. So, welcome everyone who just came in. So, we have about 31 audience right now. So, to those who are asking questions, please do stay till the end because we're going to have a special session just to answer a question. So, we have two more questions to go for Mrs. Stanley. The next question is basically revolving around the pandemic that's happening right now. So a lot of people are talking about this. It's like the hottest thing right now. So what do you think of it? And is it possible for startups to emerge successful and sustainable outside of this particular pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, 8 out of 10, discussion, currently is all focusing on that.
Uh-huh.
Uh, what I can say is, especially in business, is very difficult to try to fix or try to pivot in such a short notice,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's why, again, come back to my planning just now. We always try to plan ahead and try to anticipate. I mentioned just now, in the planning, normally you will have like the best case scenario and the worst case scenario,
Mm-hmm.
right? If the worst case scenario happens, that's what's happening now. If that happens, what can you do, right? So for example, certain industry, like tourism or flight and all those,
Oh
there's
yeah.
not much you can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in your planning, normally, if that worst case scenario happens, if you can't actually solve it, what else can you do? What's your plan B, for example,
Mm.
right? So
Yep.
for certain industry that really, really can't do much, right? So if you plan ahead, then you might able to have, for example, some savings for you to hang on to pass through this period,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some of them, like especially now, all this F&B, food and beverages, the easiest way for them to pivot is now to take away,
Yeah.
put put your stuff online,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully you can recover some business from that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are the things that so it's very industry segment dependent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, so depends on which industry you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can pivot in such a short period of time, then you try to do as much as you can. But my advice is, for during this period, right, uh, preserving your cash is more important, right? You can
Mm.
pivot, but you don't pivot for the sake of just pivoting, right? Everyone pivot. I also try to pivot, because when you pivot, you need to spend more money, right?
Agree.
And you
Yeah.
you won't know whether the money you spend and the revenue you're going to come in, is worth it or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you spend more than the money coming in, then you will have less cash for you to hang on, to try to weather out
Yep.
the period, because we don't know how long you keep the MCO will extend,
True.
right? So that come back again to the financial management, the cash flow management again, right? Look at your cash flow, right? And look at uh, whether worthwhile spending that kind of money. If you can bring more than what you spend, then okay, go out and
Mm.
still be cautious, because you never know. Because every time you pivot, right, in a way, you are going into a new business model that is not proven and not validated yet. I mean,
Yeah.
from your company perspective, you don't see other people pivot. Their success doesn't mean you will able to do the same,
True.
right? Remember, we talked about the startup and the non-startup. So the startup is in
Yep.
search of, you know, a validated business model. So when you pivot, you're
Mm-hmm.
actually going back to that stage, and that stage
Ah.
is,
Ha, 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 ha.
it's not certain.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Okay,
I see.
so you know, pivoting, normally people pivot in a situation where your existing business is doing well, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you see that it's like it's not growing anymore, right? Like it's still making revenue, good revenue, but it's not growing as what you have focused. You know that this is like a sunset business going down.
Mm.
That's where now you pivot or you create, a new business model so that over time you can use this to, because when you create a new business model, as I said, it take time to validate, take time to mature.
Yep.
It might take 6 months or 1 year before it start to generate new revenue. So if
Mm-hmm.
you have an existing revenue generating business but it's not growing, you want to transit, you can, because you still have revenue coming in. So you can
Mm-hmm.
use this revenue to actually, subsidize this one. Like now
Mm.
a lot of them talk about digitalization. You're moving your
Yep.
whole business into online. That is not over weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need time. You need to not only the front end. Is a lot of them, they just thought that, like all these SMB, they thought that they have their whole menu on the online. That means they're digitized already.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yep.
not, because your back end is all still manual,
Mm-hmm.
right? Digitalization process involves front end, back end, everything, right? You look at our recently the government portal, right, where they have to apply to get approval to operate in the MCO during the
Yep.
MCO period.
Yep.
They open the
Understand.
portal, like 1-2 hours, they have to close it out
Crash.
because the whole system crashed,
Yep.
right? Even you manage to submit, they still need to take 5 days for them to get the approval. That means their back
Mm-hmm.
end is still manual. I mean, why you need 5 days to approve,
Proof.
application? If everything is digitalized, you should approve it in less than 5 minutes or 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one of the big challenges.
Okay. So for those who don't know, Mr. Stanley is also available on FutureLab platform, and you can also connect to him on LinkedIn. So I'm just going to share with all of you his link for FutureLab. If you'd like to engage with him even further after the discussion that we have today, please do. Just write bit.ly/FL Stanley, and you'll be right up on his account in FutureLab. And if you'd like to connect to his LinkedIn, it's going to be shown down below. So my last question for today, who's the right mentee for you? And maybe what are the three things that you look in a mentee, like when you mentor them?
Hmm. So again, back to what I have mentioned earlier, the first thing I look at is uh, the mindset of the founders themselves. It's like what we have a term for it is whether they are coachable or not, right? I mean, if you have someone that is not coachable, then no point you have a coach, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you say, they're not following or they're not listening, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
the most fundamental, right? Whether they have the right mindset. Of course, subsequently is, you know, uh, whether they have the passion, right? They
Mm-hmm.
have the right business model, right, to grow.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the three fundamental that I'm looking at.
All right, cool. So now we're gonna jump right into the Q&A session. There's quite a lot of questions we have here. So the first question is coming in from Irfan Ismail. So his question goes like, let's say you're testing a startup idea with an MVP and it is not going well. How long should you remain in operation before calling quits? And is there any key indicators?
Yes. So yeah, this is a very common questions.
Mm-hmm.
Again, back to the fundamental. Again, is always coming back to that. If you have a proper business plan done out earlier,
Mm-hmm.
you actually are able to have all these what we call the traction or performance metrics, right? You will know a certain week, certain month, or certain quarter, right? What kind of numbers I need to achieve, right? In order for me to keep going,
Yep.
right? If the number is like close to that, what you have planned out, then you're on the right track, right? If it's like way, way below, then there's something not right there. So you either have to relook at your whole MVP business model or your product, your 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 fundamental whatever. Try to fix it, right? And measure against again the metrics that you already have, right? For example, again, the performance metric or the traction metric is another big subject. Go and read out. Right? There's a lot of information there. I have some posting in my Facebook also talk about that. Because every companies, every business model have their own type of metrics, right? Like I mentioned just now, cost of acquisition, CACs, your lifetime value, customer value. Those are the common one, right? For example, your weekly recurring revenue or your a weekly recurring customer, for example, right? If you're doing like all these e-commerce site, so you want to look at your basket size, you need to want to look at your recurring customers, okay? So look at all this, okay? Have it on weekly, monthly, quarterly kind of grow, the kind of grow you want to have at least, right? For you to sure that this is a viable business. As I say, the longer you can plan, the better you can see, right? If you plan 6 months, try to plan 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, right? And you can see what it takes for you to grow from this number to this number because there is a jump. Every
Yep.
jump require you to do certain things, right?
True. True.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So they should be some form of like checkpoint that you must
Yes.
reach before you proceed to the next jump.
Yes. That's why I say it all come back to the business plan, that plan. If you have that, all the information is there, right? So you just need to compare or measure against it. Because if not, you won't know. Let's say when you run this marketing campaign, you get 100 customers. Is that a lot or not a lot? You
Yep.
don't know. You must have everything must have a forecast baseline, right? Then the actual come in, you compare. Okay, so you need to know what you see. The fundamental is all your short-term performance metrics or your traction metrics must contribute directly to your bottom line, your revenue. That means if let's say you have five, when each of them grow, your revenue must grow or your profit must grow.
Yep.
For example, having a lot of likes on your Facebook or your portal doesn't contribute to your revenue.
True.
That is not a performance metric, right? A lot of them say, well, when they come to pitch, they want to ask for 2 million investment. We ask them, what's your traction? Oh, I have 100,000 like on my Facebook, right? That is
Yep.
not a performance traction metrics. Okay.
Yep. All right. I hope that answers your question, Irfan. So the next question comes from Vinod. So his question is, what are investors' ROI when majority of startups are burning cash and losing money, and how do startup convince investors that it is a valuable investment?
Yeah. I mean, again, this is $1 million question. Okay. But as I said, fortunately, there are a lot of write-up out there. You can actually go and read and learn. Okay, but the fundamental, okay, as you have pointed out, they are investors. What I mean by investors? So investors means they're looking for return.
Yep.
So you say what are the ROI when the measure is self burning? So for them is just like other form of investment in equities or whatever. They will try to invest, in the best companies that they felt or they believe that will give them the most return, right? That's why you see a lot of VCs or investors. They normally invest in a lot of startup, right? That's what we call the spray and pray kind of
Oh.
method, right? They invest
Okay.
30, 40, then they expect maybe one or two, make it IPO or whatever, they will recover all the investment
Mm-hmm.
because they themselves also not confident, right?
Uh,
Which one to invest? If they're confident, they will invest in a very small numbers of startup only,
yeah.
right? Because of also the the the, the difficulty of the challenge of evaluating a startup because the
Mm-hmm.
startup don't have track record, don't have traction, don't have revenue history and all those. How do they evaluate? So it's
Mm-hmm.
also they also very find it very difficult, right?
True.
So uh, for startup, right? For startup, that means they have not gone through the market validation stage. A
True.
lot of weightage. That means how they weight, how they do assessment is uh, first of all very heavy on the founders team, right? They look
Mm.
at the team. Let's say you have two or three people. They look at these two or three people, how good they are, because as I said, the
Mm.
execution matters. If you
Correct.
don't have a good team, whatever business model, how good is it? You're not able to execute. So the failure rate is very high,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the team is important. Then the business model come
Mm-hmm.
second, right? So
Mm-hmm.
for you to, want to have a higher probability of get invested, if you're a startup, you don't have any track record,
Yeah.
find a good founders team, right? As I said, mentioned just now, a lot of investors also preferred, have in your team, you have
Mm-hmm.
one matured guy, a mature team members, or
Mm-hmm.
even advisor. I mean, you see a lot of those come up with a lot of advisors, but those advisors, part-time advisor, doesn't mean anything, right? If you want to have an advisor or coach or mentor, make sure this guy, you know, have some stake in it or spend,
Mm.
at least 50% of the time, his time there in order to
Mm-hmm.
contribute. No point you have 10 advisor there,
Yes. Yes.
professor or whatever, dato or whatever in there, but just name only, right? So once a while they have lunch with you and give you advice. That doesn't help much. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So,
Yeah.
all right. Good question by Vinod. And it's my first time hearing the term spray and pray. So, next we have another question from Mansoor. Hi, Stanley. Any advice for ecosystem builders or government agencies with regard to running mentoring programs or providing support for post COVID 19?
Okay. Um, my advice is again, come back to that planning. Let's say you try to plan this business for the next 2 to 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is this COVID-19 thingy will yeah, it might drag for a while, but is this sustainable? Again, you
Mm-hmm.
come back to the market size, right? The market demand for it. Okay, so 6 months maybe yes, because now we are in this pandemic,
Yeah.
but 12 months, 18 months, 24 months down the road, when when people start to forget about this, will your demand still there or not? Yeah, of course,
Mm.
maybe 2 or 3 years down the road, another pandemic come in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then your business will grow again, but then you are depending on the
True.
elements that you have no control,
Yeah.
right?
True.
So you depend on luck. You hope that every year they have pandemics, then your business will will grow, but
Yeah.
that is not a good business model, right?
True.
So yeah, so when you start a business, as I say again, don't plan for short term. Don't just plan for current event or whatever. Yes, you can uh, capitalize on it, right? If
Mm-hmm.
your business model happens to be able to make use of this event now and help you to boost, yes. But your
Mm-hmm.
business model also need to be able to grow after this,
True.
right? So you
Mm-hmm.
you you not advisable just to depend on just one. So apparently you only see this as an opportunity, yes, but after that, what happened?
True.
Right? Your business need to keep growing, right?
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
All right. So, all right. Our last question for today, from Amira Norizan. Her question is: Hello, Stanley. What are your recommendations on good materials, social media content, podcasts, books to follow and truly get into the entrepreneurial mindset, and any personal favorites?
Uh, yeah, I don't have really any recommendation because every person is different, right? Depends
Yep.
on uh, what you feel comfortable. If you felt comfortable reading books and all those, yeah, go ahead. Okay. I mean, me personally, I don't really like to read books. Okay, like all these thick books, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. My preference is I like to read articles. Right. I like to join a lot of those forums, chat group, right? That provide you know real feedback. Okay, and also because in those forums and all those, you can also ask questions.
Yep.
You can communicate, right? You get real feedback coming back, and then you can also contribute as well. Okay, and also on this chat and on these forums, all those, you get the latest trend from from the ecosystem, from the market. I mean, reading books also good, but books are those more like, yeah, you need to build your fundamental, like the mindset, how to
Yep.
think positive. Yeah, those you can read books, right? Because those are evergreen. That one you read now, you read 10 years later, it's still the same,
Yep.
which is good. I'm not saying it's not good. I used to read that, earlier
Back
day,
then.
but once you reach certain stage, you need more, interactive kind of communications, right? You need to always keep yourself abreast of new development. For example, like what is the hottest trend this year, for example. What is the prediction for next year trend, for example? So you need to look at other country like China. What China is doing now is what we're going to see here, next 2-3 years,
Yep.
for example. So uh, basically, if you want recommendation, I would say read books and also try to also spend some time on forums, chat groups, and all those. Don't just spend all time on one site, right? And you build your own reference site, you build your own community, right? You build your own peers, right? That you learn from each others. Right? That's my recommendations.
All right. So we are reaching to the end of our online session for today. So to those who would like to connect with Stanley personally, you can find him on. Can I also share your Facebook?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Go ahead.
You can find him on Facebook. I didn't put it down the link, but you can always find him on Facebook. Just write down Stanley Chong. You'll definitely find him. Uh, and also on LinkedIn, especially as well as FutureLab, if you would like to directly engage with Stanley as a mentor. So I'm just gonna share the link down below. But before we end, any parting words to our audience? Maybe like for startups, like coming startups, like any parting words for them?
Okay. Okay, so this is what I like to share. Starting the entrepreneur journey um, is is really hard, really tedious, right? You need to, as I said, have it in the right mindset, right? It's a marathon, it's not a sprint, right? So you need to prepare yourself physically and mentally, right? It's a long journey, okay? If you are young, especially those youngsters and all those, my advice is go out and try, okay? But don't expect the first time you will hit it. You need to have the mindset of, if I fail, I try to learn as much as I can from the failing and start again, okay? So I'm not saying uh, failure is okay or whatever. I mean, you try to avoid it. So
Yeah.
by avoiding it, as I said, make a lot of preparation, right? Read a lot, try to get yourself into that rhythm, but don't but as I said, don't give up if you fail, right? The advantage you guys have is you are young. My advice is start early because you have less commitment, right? Either you start early or you start very late, right?
Yeah.
You try to start in between when you start When you just start to have a family, children, you have a lot of
Mm.
financial commitment, it's even tougher, right? Because the chances of failing is very high, right? So for those that just come out from universities, just assume that you're extending your studies for another 2-3 years, lah, you know. Okay, go out there and yeah, tell your mom I'm going for my master degree or whatever, but you go out there and get rent a room with a few friends, just do it, right? So you will learn more and faster than, I mean, if you go out to work, you also learn. But believe me, starting your own, you will learn much faster, much more, but it's harder, right? You're
Indeed.
suffering, right? Like they say, entrepreneur journey is like, someone that, spend a few years that nobody want to spend, you know, but you will live, the years that everyone want to live after that.
Mm.
Okay.
Wow.
The first few years you're suffering.
Yep.
Okay. But if you able to pass that, for the rest of your life, you're living the life that everyone wish they want to live in, but they can't.
True. 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 Right. So yeah, I hope like
Okay.
that's a very, very, very strong advice. Actually, like, because a lot of like entrepreneurs, like aspiring entrepreneurs out there, they give up. They feel like the hustle, like, is this the hustle that I'm gonna go into, and they end up like giving up. But I really hope that they take what Mrs. Stanley has given for today as an advice, and maybe if they would like to engage more with Stanley, please do just find him on FutureLab. So I think that's all for today. Today's episode of FutureLab webinar. We'll definitely have Mr. Stanley again in the near future. Thank you so much, Mr. Stanley, for having me and having FutureLab to onboard you today. And thank you so much for everyone for attending our live session today. So if you'd like to book again Mr. Stanley Chong as your mentor, just head on over on the link down below. And yeah, so join us again next week when we talk about automating business flow through tech with J. Chong Yen Zhe. And make sure you like and follow FutureLab on their Facebook, LinkedIn to keep up to date to their latest program. And as always, everyone, stay safe and we see you again. Thank you. Bye bye.
Goodbye. Bye.
Bye. All right.